Welcome to KMX Behind the Curtain. In today's interview, we're going to be speaking to the man behind the hotly anticipated mobile phone game, Indie Wrestler. We'll talk about how the game got started, what you can expect from the gameplay, how we got that authentic feel from a 2-hour conversation with Mark Haskins, and also where can we see the game in 2 to 3 years' time. So let's get behind the curtain with Indie Wrestler. Rehan, welcome to KMX Behind the Curtain. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
For anyone that doesn't know, you are one of the guys behind Indie Wrestler, one of the new mobile phone apps coming to us soon. So we've got you on today to talk to you about the game, looking at how and when it's going to be coming out and all the ins and outs of it. So let's start off with how did the game come about?
So I own a digital marketing company and lifelong wrestling fan. And we had a client who approached us and said, "We want to make a game. Do you have anything in your portfolio?" Which at the time we didn't. And sat down with a team and said, "Do we not have a game in our portfolio because we can't make it? Or do we not have a game in our portfolio because we just never had the opportunity to make one?" And it was not the former, it was the latter. We just never had that conversation crop up before. And when you're an agency, people always ask for a portfolio of some sort. So can we have a look at what you've done before? Can you showcase us some stuff? And it's very difficult with a game, with the expense it takes, with the time it takes, to just say to somebody, "Look, trust us. We haven't done it, but we know we can do it." So I thought, you know what? I've got an agency. Why don't we just make a game ourselves to have something in our portfolio? And when we brainstormed, I said, "Look, I'm a wrestling fan. I've had an idea for a wrestling game for a very long time. I haven't seen anyone make a game like this. Why don't we make it?" And that's when Indie Wrestler started. We sat down with the team, went through the idea, and fleshed it out. And 18 months on, here we are.
And how did you find that? Because obviously being a wrestling fan is quite a niche market in certain areas. How did you find when you're sitting down going, "I'm a wrestling fan, we should make a wrestling game"? How was that kind of perceived by your colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with it is with the team, because we're an agency, we're always approached by different businesses in different industries, restaurants, NGOs, charities, car part manufacturers, counseling, the whole gambit approaches. So the guys are aware of it from that perspective that, look, we're going to be shown a challenge. Let's just rise to the occasion. Let's do our research. There's always a research phase when you're an agency. So that wasn't the primary issue. The major issue was this was a passion project of mine that I had been looking to do for a very long time. And I also was aware that the wrestling community is very, very specific and particular about what they want and what they don't want. So I put a lot of pressure on myself and on the team to say, "Look, guys, we need to get this right. I don't want to go out and put something with my name next to it, with our name next to it in the wrestling space and it not hit the levels that we want it to." And that's where it was a little bit trickier because the team, aside from myself, are not into wrestling. And so it was really on myself to try to give them, my 36 years worth of wrestling kind of insight, and put that into a game. So that was the tricky part, just me and my kind of expectations.
And how did you kind of explain wrestling to them? Did you sit them down and put any wrestling on in front of them and say, "This is kind of like, this is what you should be watching," or how about do you go about doing that?
No, I mean, because the thing with it is generally speaking, everyone has a frame of reference for wrestling, even if it's like Hulk Hogan or The Rock or the mainstream guys. Everyone knows the WWF. Everybody knows WWE or John Cena or whatever it is. So it's in the background of everyone's minds, and everyone, when we first say wrestling game, everyone just thinks of the WWE style games. You have a character, you step in the ring, you kick, punch, headlock, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas our game is completely different. As is almost the best way I describe it to most people is it's football manager for wrestling, and it's a completely different perspective. It's a completely different approach to a wrestling game. And so it was more of a case of getting the guys to understand the framework of football manager along with wrestling and kind of bring those two together. And the thing that I learned to do through that process and during that process was to keep things very simple. It's very, very easy to stand there and say, "Okay, let's put barbed wire matches in there. Let's have four-way, eliminations. Let's have Hell in a Cell. Let's do this, that, and the other." The game itself is so complex that what I had to do was almost keep at that first level. And what we're planning to do is, if it's successful, is start to release the later stuff afterwards, because you can get really lost. With such
Yeah.
a complex idea, you can get very lost very quickly. So, yeah, I didn't get them to watch anything. I just gave them frames of reference in respects of this is what we wanted to do, and the team were very capable of seeing that through.
So was that your initial plan? But when you've obviously been thinking about a game, you were thinking like a Football Manager sort of wrestling game, and you were kind of thinking that. And then when this guy's come to you and said, "I've got an idea of a game," and you've gone, "I know exactly what I can do here," and it kind of brought your passion to your work together, and it was kind of like the perfect kind of coming together for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so the thing with it is I very rarely play FIFA nowadays. I'll do it once in a while, but I'll play Football Manager every single year. And when I was growing up, when I was 15, 16, around that age, I used to play a lot of wrestling games, but like Promotion Wars, Extreme Warfare Revenge, those statistical where you become the promoter and you get wrestlers in and you try to put matches against. I enjoyed that part more, because I always felt with the WWE game, once I'd mastered the moves, it actually wasn't challenging anymore. It was like, well, I figured it out. I'm just going to repeat. It's going to be rinse and repeat. Whereas I like the idea I can change things up, mix things up. So I always wanted to create that kind of game for wrestling, because I just thought I'll never be able to create a game where you step in the ring and kick and punch better than WWE. And plus, there's a whole bunch of other people right now making those kind of games. It just was like, why go down a route which was already, we're just never going to be the best. So I thought, okay, let's try something different. And I didn't want to replicate what Extreme Warfare Revenge did and what Promotion Wars did, where you were the booker, because I thought, well, somebody's already kind of done that. So how do we twist this story and design something that's a different approach? So rather than being the booker and hiring in wrestlers, I thought, well, what if you were the wrestler and you would have to go around and try to get booked by promotions, try to get over with the fans, get along with wrestlers, really go on a wrestler's journey, respond to social media comments and outbursts, and then try to get booked and get over all around the world and win titles in multiple different promotions. One of the things that I said to the guys was, there used to be this wrestler called Ultimo Dragon, and he's got an image of himself with like 10 or 15 belts when he was in WCW. And I said the reason he was able to do that was he would just go to different countries and different promotions and win, and they would just give him the belt and stuff. I said I wanted to replicate that into a wrestling game, which you can't do on any other wrestling game as far as I know. And so I was always focused on creating something like that, primarily because it's the kind of game that I think I would enjoy. Because I would suspect that every time I play, it'd be a different challenge.
No, and kind of look at that. You obviously say you're a wrestling fan, and I think in your first post you put up in December 2019, I think it was, when your first initial post for Indie Wrestler, you put up a wrestling game for wrestling fans by wrestling fans. And so I say like you are aiming it at yourself, basically. This game you want to be good for you, because if you think it's good for you, it's going to be good for other wrestling fans.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, if nobody ever plays it, I don't really mind. I'll play it.
Yeah,
I'll enjoy it.
I'm playing it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. I'll play it. And so ultimately, yeah. I mean, one of the things when I was just fleshing it out, I thought this would be really cool if I was in a queue to go to a show, a wrestling show, and I was just in a queue and I was on my phone and I was able to play a wrestling game. And the guy behind me was like, I'm playing the same game, but I'm at a further level than you are. And my character's got different clothing to yours has, and my stats are different. Oh, and I've won a belt in TNT, and I've won a belt in MCW in Australia, and I'm the champion in SPG in Singapore. And the other guy's like, oh, well, I just lost my world title in WXW in Germany, and I faced this guy. And, just to have that like kind of wrestling kind of banter, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I thought, well, if I could create something like that, the fact that you could play it on your phone, you don't have to take your PlayStation somewhere. You can just play if you're in an arena waiting for something, if you're in a cinema or whatever, pull out your mobile phone, play a wrestling game that's not going to be too taxing on the mind. And that's what I was trying to create.
It's like another community within inside the wrestling community as such.
Yeah. And we felt that, we've reached out to different people, spoken to different people. And there is, this game isn't aimed at the casual wrestling fan. If someone is only ever seen WWF or WWE or says, well, I used to watch wrestling when it was WCW, you're probably not going to connect with this game because this is Indie Wrestler. We have lots of independent wrestlers, lots of independent promotions. Half of these names are going to make no sense to you whatsoever, right? And that's just being honest, keeping it real. Maybe somewhat now because there's NXT UK and stuff, but generally speaking, it's very much aimed at an indie demographic, which is a niche within a niche. You know, wrestling fans are a niche. Indie wrestling fans are a niche within that niche. So, you know, we knew from the beginning that it's going to be aimed at a very hardcore audience, which was fine because that's the wrestling fan in me. That was the guy I was when I was 15, 16, 17. I knew about, you know, AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and Christopher Daniels in those days when before they hit the mainstream, before they were the household names and stuff. And that's what I was interested in. And that's what I wanted to recreate for fans. So yeah, it's definitely aimed at that community, and that support that we've had from that very niche community has also been, you know, really, really welcome.
That's good. So you talk about the kind of the idea was about 18 months ago. It's obviously been in the planning. So how did it kind of start? You've obviously had these team meetings to say this is what we want to do, this is what I'm aiming for. And obviously you've reached out to other wrestlers, or was there an idea to have a database of just generic names, or what happened at the beginning?
So what happened right at the beginning was had this idea, okay, we're going to make a wrestling game. And the guys just thought I was just talking waffle. It was never going to happen. Just come up with this pie in the sky idea. We're going to make a wrestling game. And they're like, he's going to have a different idea tomorrow. So what I did was I reached out to about 6 wrestlers, all UK based, all independent. And I said, look, I'm thinking about making a wrestling game. Can I pick your brain a little bit to understand, you know, how a wrestler's journey is, how you get booked by promotions, how you decide who's going to win and lose, what it's like traveling, what do you have to think of, so on and so forth. And every single one completely blanked my email except one guy. Mark Haskins replied, and he said, "Oh, I'm based down the road. I'm in Birmingham. He's based not too far away." And he said, "I'll happily meet with you." And I was like, "Okay." Went down, met him the very next day. It was possible, and I just picked his brains for like 2 hours. We were in a coffee shop. You know, what about this? What about that? He gave me all this insight. Came back, and I was like, "We're making this game, team. I don't care if you guys think I'm just talking it. Now it's happening. I've got an international wrestling superstar who I've now met, even if it's just to save my face, you know, I need to make this game." And that's kind of how it started. And then the original plan, the meeting with Mark, was primarily just to kind of get an insight into how an independent wrestler's life is. At that time, I was an outsider from a wrestling perspective. You know, I was a wrestling fan for very many years, but I wasn't in wrestling, if that makes sense. And so I sat there and I said, guys, look, it's going to be incredibly difficult to get real wrestlers, real promotions in this game. And we had a database of like 350 made up names, you know, Captain this and, you know, Sir this and Kicks a Lot this and, you know, all these like, you know, names. And we went to the internet and just started mixing people's names, you know, Miller Jones and Steven Die Hard and all these kind of things. So, and we made fake promotion names and everything. And we were going to, at the time, go for a crowdfunding avenue to kind of fund the game because making games is very expensive. And I reached out to Rampage Brown's management team. Rampage Brown is now the guy who signed up with NXT UK. He's a big independent wrestling in the UK anyway, big name on the scene. And his management team said that, oh, if you want, and I said, look, we want to get in touch because we want to make a video promoting our game and what it's about and what you can do in the game. Can we book Rampage for that? And they said, oh, we have another wrestler. His name is Adam Maxted. He's an upcoming wrestler. If you wanted, we could get both of them and you could have like an in-ring interaction. So we went, we shot this wrestling video. And, you know, when you spend 4 or 5 hours with somebody, you kind of get a familiarity, you have banter going back and forth. And just as part of the conversation, I said, oh, by the way, guys, we're making this game. It's all fake names. Do you mind, like, us including your names in there? And I said, look, we're not creating characters. So it's not like a WWE game where we're going to, you know, need to recreate your body and your skin and how your moves and stuff. It's just your name and your picture. And they were both like, yeah, sure, you know, put our names in, we don't mind. And then Mark Haskins was like, yeah, you can use my name. And I thought every single person I've interacted with in the wrestling world, aside from the first 5 guys who didn't reply to my email, but generally speaking, since everyone's kind of said, yeah, we'll happily put ourselves in. So I thought, okay, let me just start outreaching independent wrestlers and just said, look, we've got Rampage. So I started doing that classic marketing trick, start referencing the guys who've already got in. By the way, we've got Rampage in, we've got Mark Haskins in, we've got Adam Maxted in. Do you want to be in? And they were like, okay, if they're in, I'll be in. And then I would just start reaching out to promotions and saying, "Oh, by the way, we've got all these wrestlers in. They seem to be in your promotion. Do you want your promotion to be in? It'll be, great promotion for you guys." And they were like, "Okay." And then it just started growing and growing and growing. And then I was like, "Okay, scrap this idea of having fake wrestlers and fake promotions. We're gonna go all in. No pun intended, but we're gonna go all in, get all real wrestlers, real promotions in. And if nobody wants to be in there, that's fine. But those who do, let's really shine a light on independent wrestling, and let's really do something that is not just a game for me, but really helps elevate the independent scene." And so that's how we've developed it since.
And did you find that, like, obviously speaking to Mark Haskins, who is a very big name in the wrestling world, and like having that kind of one-to-one with him, and him kind of like being very into it and kind of, as you say, setting that fire underneath you. Do you reckon that, along with kind of other promotions and wrestlers being all in with it, as you say, kind of like being really keen to be involved, that make it more realistic and more authentic to you, that kind of this could work?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've been testing the game, and one of the things that happens is when we first test in the game, we just have the same names over and over. You're testing for bugs, and you're testing to make sure the journey kind of works. So you have the same 10 names, and you just replicate them for every single promotion, every single name. It's fun, but after a while, it just is a bit like, I've seen those same 10 names. Now that we've got all the real promotions in and all the real names in, there's an extra layer of excitement. You want to get to the next promotion because you're like, I want to face that guy.
Yeah.
I want to be able to work with that guy. I want to do this with that guy. I want to win the belt for that company. I want to do this and do this and do this. And when you play the game yourself, and when it is released, you'll feel that. And when I was testing it, I was saying to the guys that the game is great. I feel like I'm missing something. And then when they put the real information in, I was like, yeah, that's what it was missing. It was missing that this relatability to, I know that guy. When we were testing, we did alpha testing in December. One of the guys is from Belgium, and he just wanted to unlock the Belgian promotion so he could face the Belgian wrestlers. And there's a guy from Australia, and he was like, I just wanted to go to the Australian promotions and face my favorite wrestlers that I go to and see and all that kind of stuff. So it really does help a lot having the real guys in.
Yeah. And obviously, speaking about the initial 5, are any of them in the game?
Initial 5, no.
No, I won't ask you who they are. I'll ask you off camera. No. Okay, so looking at the game, so when someone starts the game, when it's obviously ready to download, what they're expecting when the game first starts, what do they have to do, and how do they get started on it?
So the first thing that you have to do is you have to create your character. You have to give yourself a name. You have to give your finishing move a name, and you have to define what your finishing move is going to be. So you can have a power move, you can have a technical move, you can have an aerial move. And then what you do is you have to choose your skin, your avatar, if you will. We have 3 different skin tones in the game. So that's the first thing you do. You create your character, essentially. Once you've created your character, you go through a training facility, which is our way of having a tutorial in the game. The training facility is Fighting Spirit, so it's a training academy that was in Liverpool. It's just shut down in the last couple of days, but it was owned by the Grizzled Young Veterans, the tag team. And about 6 months ago, we asked them if they wouldn't mind being the training school in our game. And even though they're shut down, it's good for us to continue using the name to keep the legacy of the training school going. So yeah, you go through a tutorial. The tutorial will show you how to do moves, how to do promos in the game, how to buy gear and equip that to your character, how to respond to incidents, how to get bookings, and it'll take you through the journey of the core elements of the game. Once you've gone through the training facility, they will introduce you to a promoter for New Generation Wrestling, NGW. It's a promotion in the UK. And that'll be your first kind of foot in the door in the wrestling world. So your job is, or they will get you booked to the first show. And after that, you're on your own. You have to put on good matches. You have to get yourself over. Depending on how well you do, you have to then unlock more promotions. You have to buy contracts so that you can go to these shows. You have to buy miles for your car to make sure you can make it to the shows, because if you don't have enough car miles, you'll end up no-showing a show. And then if you no-show, the promoter's going to be unhappy with you. If you want to make things easier for yourself, you get managers to help you from the outside. If you didn't like how a match went or a promo went, you can get a referee to ring the bell again and start over. So that's kind of how it starts off. And then, you start off in the UK. Then depending on how you go to France. Depending on how you go there, you can go to Denmark. Then you go to Europe, general Europe, then Germany. Once you've done the European kind of circuit, then you move over to Asia. You have an Asian tab and you have a Australia tab, and then depending on how you do there, you head over to North America, and we've got Canada unlocked right now, and soon we'll have the US.
Perfect. So going right to the beginning of the game. So obviously you've picked your name, you've picked your finisher and what type of finisher it is, and you say you picked the avatar that's obviously going to be on the side. And then you obviously go into you go through the training school, and it explains how the game works. You talked about how you can buy gear. So the gear, what's that in relation to? Is that just to put onto your avatar?
Yeah, so you put it onto your avatar, and the idea is, generally speaking, in wrestling, people upgrade their gear and it gives them a new look. It's about evolving your look and taking yourself up to the next level. So what happens in our game is when you buy gear, you get more over. And the way that you unlock more levels is, getting over in kind of wrestling terms, is we've incorporated that in the game, and that's kind of like XP. So in our game, over and XP are kind of interchangeable. And so you buy gear, the more gear you buy, the more XP you get. Hopefully you get enough XP to kind of help you expand your points in the game and either make it to the next level or get closer to the next level. So that's how gear works. We've had customized gear designed. In the future, not on this version, but in the future, we've got ideas to have exclusive gear that will be available for a short period of time. And when you apply that, you'll get in-game bonuses for a very short period of time and whatnot. So that's how the gear bits work.
And you talk about the XP, so like the attributes. Obviously, we talk about Football Manager, you get the attributes on players. I presume you'll have attributes on the wrestlers as well?
Not on the actual wrestlers.
Okay.
So the way that you will have attributes.
Yeah, on the player you play, yes.
Attributes. Yeah, you'll have attributes. So what we're trying to do is when you have a wrestling match, when you work for a wrestling promotion, you're not going in the match to beat the other person. You're going there to have a good match with somebody. So you're going in there, they say to you, okay, you're going to face Rampage Brown. The promoter doesn't say to you, by the way, try to figure out how you're going to win, and sneak up behind him and try to pin him and stuff. It's more like, look, this is the direction we want to go in. You two guys need to go on and put a good match on. And your part in that is to execute your moves correctly. And as you start to execute your moves perfectly, your stats for those, for those particular moves will increase. So if you do a power move perfectly, your power statistics in the game will raise. If you do a technical move perfectly, they'll go up. Likewise, if you perform them poorly or you botch them, your stats will come down. And depending on whether they're up or down, the next time you have a match, that move could be potentially easier for yourself or more difficult. So if you're getting better at it, the move will be easier for you the next time. If you're getting worse, it'll start to get difficult for you. So the incentive is keep working on your moves, keep playing, keep getting better, because then as you progress and you need more XP and more points to kind of move forward, you want the matches to be easier for yourself. So that's kind of how it ties in.
And you talked about how you perform moves there. Is there like a technical thing you do on your phone to obviously perform that move, or how's that work?
Yeah, so our game is a tap-based game.
Yeah.
So you don't have like a PlayStation controllers. What you have to do is you have to tap on the screen at certain points. So if you're doing a power move, a bit like, have you played FIFA and you take a penalty?
Yes.
In FIFA, when you take a penalty, you have that bar that kind of goes across, and you have to get the bar in the middle. You have to tap it when it's at the perfect position. That's how you do a power move. So it'll go back and forth. When it gets to the middle, tap your screen. If you get it right, the move will be perfectly done. If you get it slightly out, okay, it'll still be done quite well. If you get it completely wrong, you're going to mess it up. An aerial move is the same. You have like a zoom effect, and then when the circles kind of go over the top of each other, you tap, and that's how that one works. And a technical move, you have to tap the screen repeatedly, and you have like a circle, and you have to try to make the circle disappear. So that's how you perform moves.
Nice. So with that game sort of thing, what are we expecting to see on the screen? Obviously you've got it in testing still, so we've not seen it. So what are we expecting to see on the screen when all this sort of stuff's happening? Is it a text-based sort of game with obviously the technical side of it?
Yeah. So what you'll do is when you go into a match, for example, you'll start to read text on the screen. Each line of commentary will kind of come up. We actually have a commentator, Dave Bradshaw. He's one of the well-known commentators on the UK independent scene. He reads certain lines out. So when the match starts, he'll read a line out to say the match has started. Then you'll start seeing text on the screen, and then you'll be asked to perform a move. When you see a pink box, that means, okay, a move's going to come up. Then when you press the next button, you'll go to like an arena screen. You'll see a background of an arena. You'll hear crowd noise, and you'll see the action that you have to perform. You'll have your time to perform the move. Once you perform the move, you'll come back to the commentary screen. Dave Bradshaw then will do his commentary on how well you did the move. So if you've done it perfectly, he'll say, oh, that move was done perfectly. If you've done it poorly, he'll say, oh, that was disastrous, so on and so forth. And it'll keep going through that pattern. And we do that for 3 times in one match, unless it's a championship match. If it's a championship match, because it's meant to be more difficult, you have to do the moves 5 times. At the end of the 3 or 5 moves, then the match will end, depending on whether the promoter told you that you were going to win or lose. That corresponding commentary will come up, and Dave will say his line, and then the match ends. When the match ends, you'll have feedback from fans. So fans, the wrestler that you faced, and the promoter will all give you feedback on how well the match went. And then your ratings in the game with fans, other wrestlers, promoters will go up and down depending on that. So that's how the general flow of a match works.
And with regards to, you talk about the pink lines being that it's going to be your move coming up, is that dependent on what sort of style of wrestler you are that you pick at the beginning? If it's going to be a technical wrestler, power wrestler, or something like that, will that determine what sort of moves you're going to be doing?
Well, that determines your final move.
Yeah.
So if your final move is a power move, all the time you'll do your last thing will be your power move. The 2 before or the 4 before, if you're doing a championship match, it's completely random. So you might have a match where you're doing all power moves. Okay. You might have a match where you do 2 submission moves and 1 power move. You might have a match where you have 1 aerial, 1 submission, 1 power. It's completely random. So we're just trying to mix up. You have no idea what's going to come up until it's your last move.
Got it. And with regards to the last move, if you botch the last move, will that ruin the game, as in like how the match ends, or?
It ruins your overall match rating.
Okay, yeah.
So the idea is, again, we're trying to replicate, the real life wrestling world. If you have a wrestling match and you botch a move hard in a wrestling match, generally speaking, that's the thing that fans walk away with, like, oh, yeah. Look, did you see that bit that the guy messed up on? And so it impacts your overall rating. And what you get a chance then is, if you really botch, if let's say you botch 2 or 3 moves, you can then say, look, I'm going to apply a referee. I'm going to restart. I'm going to try it again to try to get myself a better rating. But generally speaking, you try to get yourself as good a move as possible.
And you talk about these referees. Is this kind of like a restart thing that you can buy off the game, or is it something you can earn from the game?
Yeah, so it's both. So you can buy them, and you get paid to go sign contracts with the promotions, go to shows. So as you start to accumulate your money, not only do you have to spend it on miles to get to the car, you can use some of that money to pay a referee to sit in your inventory. And then when you get to a match, if you don't like it, you can apply that referee on your match and say, okay, I'm going to restart. But you have to have, the way that the game works is we have managers and referees in the game, and you have managers and referees based on different levels. So if you're a main event star, there's certain referees that you can buy as a main eventer that you can only apply in a main event show. If you're, let's say you're main event for one company, but you're an opener for another company and you have 2 referees for main event, you can't apply that same one for an opening match. You have to have that one. So you can buy them with your in-game currency that you earn, but also as you progress in the game at certain levels, we give you free boosts, if you will, rewards, and a referee every once in a while will be one, a contract will be one, a manager will be one, cash will be one. It varies.
This idea of the car journey and the petrol, which I think is amazing, by the way, it's proper authentic. When did that come about? Who had that idea and you went, I'm having it all day long, I'm using that?
Well, that was my idea, because I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to a wrestling show, because the thing is, when you play a game, you get paid, you have in-game currency, and I'm thinking, okay, what are the things that wrestlers can spend their money on, right? And I thought, well, they all pay for their own kind of travel. And one of my ideas was, okay, you pay for a gym session, but then that was just too complicated, energy and replenishing your energy, and so I was like, okay, let's scrap that. One of the things when you have a football manager type game is statistically, man, it's overwhelming. I can't even describe to you how overwhelming. We had to get a specific mathematics specialist to come in and run through the numbers and say, look, when this happens, this is the knock-on effect, and when you do this, and oh man, I almost blew my mind at some stage, right? I was having sleepless nights, waking up in cold sweats, trying to go through these numbers. So, but the miles one, I was like, that's staying, that has to stay. And one of the things that we also have is, it's okay being in the UK, but what happens when you want to go to Australia, right? It's not realistic to say to somebody, by the way, have you got 26,000 miles in your bank to spend to go to Australia? So what we did was we said, okay, you can buy an air mile. And if you buy an air mile, that's the equivalent of 1,000 car miles. So instead of if you buy air mile, that'll give you in your bank the equivalent of 26,000 miles, for example. So you can go to that Australian show, but you don't have to individually buy 26,000 miles. You just buy one airplane, and that'll give you the air miles. So that's something that we thought we put in, and the idea behind it as well was I wanted there to be like a no-show element. Like, I've booked myself in so many. I got greedy. I overbooked. Gave my word to all these promotions, all these promoters. Like, show me the money, right? And then they were like, by the way, you've actually run out of fuel.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to go? You want to buy some more fuel, or do you just want to take the hit? And then I was like, you know what? We have to get that in, man. That would be like so crazy if somebody just was like, sorry, man, I no showed your show, and we have a 3 strikes and you out rule. Like you no show with a promoter, just like in real life. If you no show with a promoter and if you're really over with him and he's really happy with you, he's going to be really cheesed off, but he'll give you a second chance. If you come back and you no show the second time, he'll be really, really annoyed. But if you've already got contracts with him, he'll be like, well, I've got contracts with you. It's fine. If you no show a third time, that's it. Yeah. He's not booking you again. You had your three lucky strikes and you're gone. So that was a big part of it.
And to be fair, you've definitely gone into it really far into trying to make it authentic, and I think it's genuinely going to be a really good game. I'm genuinely excited to play it. So looking at the game, obviously, when it does come out, what sort of cost are you looking at? Have you worked out a costing of it when people initially buy it?
It's free. So it's a mobile game. It's free. Yeah. You don't have to pay anything. The only thing is we've intentionally. I used to play a lot of mobile games, still do. And one of the things that I don't like is when you play a mobile game, because there's a idea, everyone just wants a mobile game for free. So what a lot of publishers do is they make it that you have to pay to play. So code it in such a way that if you want to progress and you want to be the best, you better put in, $10, $100, $10,000, whatever it is, to kind of get you to that level that you want to be in. Our game is made that if you put the hours in, you never have to pay a penny, right? However, obviously, we need to kind of recoup some money.
Yeah.
So we do have elements in the game where you could buy gear, you can buy boosts to help you accelerate your growth in the game, to help you get to that next level a lot quicker. So if you say, look, I don't want to spend 200 hours playing a game, for example, I just want to finish it in 5-10 hours or whatever it might be. You just go buy the boost. So it's catered for both audiences. I was the type of guy I'd really enjoy playing Football Manager for hours and hours and hours on end. I didn't mind that kind of thing. I've also played other wrestling games where people are just like, I don't want to sit here all weekend playing a game. I'll drop you, $20, $30 to give me this boost to kind of get up. So that's how we worked it. So we haven't got things in there like, you have to have energy. And that was the other thing that used to annoy me on games. Like, I played it for 5 hours and it says, oh, by the way, you don't have enough energy now. Come back in 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, I might be doing something else in 5 minutes, man. Let me just play the goddamn game.
Yeah.
So when I have things like that, you could play it as long as you want. Just make sure you got enough air miles.
Nice. And you build the air. How do you build the air miles up?
The air miles. So you get paid cash.
Yeah.
And then you have to go to your shop and you have to buy miles. It's just like going to the petrol station and buying gas. You get paid by the promotions. And this is where the maths guy came in, where we said, look, we need to ensure that when you get paid, the value that you get paid gives you enough money to go buy air miles. It gives you enough money to buy a contract. It gives you enough money to buy a referee, buy a manager, so on and so forth. And there should also be money left over so you can, buy gear. Because when you're talking about 42 levels, you can be an opener, a mid-carder, a main eventer, you can be a champion. Or how does that, you could be in Germany, you can be in the UK, you can be in Malaysia, you can be all these different places. How does that all mathematically add up while still allowing a person to progress, while still getting, the natural linear progression in the game? So that's how you would buy it. So your in-game currency from going to a show, just like in real life, you get paid. And then the promoters, you're an independent wrestler, right? So you don't have a contract with one where they say, look, we're going to take care of everything. It's like, we'll pay you for the show. Well, if you're going to another show tomorrow, you buy your petrol to get there, and that's how it is.
So just moving on from obviously talking about the game, in regards to the database you've got, obviously speaking about the promotions and the wrestlers, how did you kind of like bracket wrestlers to certain promotions? And did you kind of have to rank the wrestlers in that promotion, say, like this one's going to be the champion, this middle card, this is the opener? How did you go about that? Was that your own personal choice, or did you speak to people, or have you done it
No,
randomly?
so what happened? The original idea was we were going to have that kind of bracketing system, and then about a year ago, there was all these articles about FIFA and like football players, like acting FIFA online, like what my stats are like this, and I'm this, and I should be faster, and I should. And I was like, there's one thing like a football player like being vexed at you. It's another thing like a wrestler being vexed at you, and a whole bunch of wrestlers being vexed
Yeah.
at you. I mean, like, I can call a few boys and stuff, but I think even they would back down, like from all the wrestlers, right, knocking on the doors. So what we did was you have your champion. The champion is whoever is the champion from the promotion. We have NGW, we have TNT, we have this and this and this promotion. Whoever is the champion that's designated will be the champion in the game. We've told all the promoters at any stage, if you change the champion, just let us know. We'll update him in the game. Like we could change it like that. So there's that, and then the rest of the wrestlers, it's an independent wrestling show isn't quite like the WWE. The WWE will have this guy's an opener, so he's going to have matches in the opening card. An independent show, it's like okay, the guy who was in the main event last week will open the show this week. He'll be in the mid card this week. They just try to match what they think will be a good show. So that's how we've done it. So you'll open up a card, and you might be facing the same guy in an opener slot as you might be in a mid card, despite the fact you've progressed to level 25. It's just the luck of the draw. That's what the promoter want you to face that day. And we think that gives it a bit more of an authentic wrestling kind of experience, rather than say this guy is a lower card and you can only face him. And
Yeah.
also, I don't want to get beat up.
No. And do you think that's something that might come in if obviously the game does take off? Do you reckon you could go more in depth with the statistics? Obviously, if you've got more time and more money to invest in it, that you might then look at doing that in the future and kind of become the kind of football manager for wrestling?
Yeah, I mean that is the ultimate game. Sorry, the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to incorporate all of those different facets in there. We want to put no DQs in there. We want to put steel cage matches. We want to bring that energy element back into it. That you have to go to the gym and you have to buy protein shakes, and you have to your when you have a match, if you botch it, your energy will go much further down than if you have it. All these the pie in the sky, the big ideas that we had, we want to incorporate them in. But when we started building it initially, we thought, look, this could either be 3 years before we release the first version, or we can just get a first version out within a year or so, and we can say to people, look, this is what the game. We'll build on top of that, and that's the route that we've taken.
No, that makes sense. And like I kind of see like that progression that can be get the first game out as quick as well, not as quick as we can, but to the right stage as we can. And then obviously as it goes and builds and builds and builds, you can add things on. It keeps that interaction and people still wanting to play because they want that latest update and they want to go and do this or do that.
Yeah. I mean, we have lots of ideas. We want to do competitions in there. You could face other people, your friends. You can have your character. You can have your own promotions and face off against each other, and have weekly, daily, monthly kind of competitions, and you'll get certain rewards for that. You can start off in any country you want to. All these kind of female wrestlers. We haven't incorporated female wrestlers
Okay.
just yet. That's going to come in the next one. So we have all these ideas, but we just thought let's get one out and then build on top.
And you talk about the association. So you're working with, I think Web is Jericho. You've got the interviewers on there. You've got managers. How did you go about doing that sort of? Obviously, Web is Jericho. How about did you get that? Did you send a message out to see if you get involved or?
So so we have an area in the game called incidents, and it's essentially social media within the game. And what happens is a famous publication, will tell you a story, and they'll say a fan said this about you, or this has happened in the wrestling world, or we've incorporated you in a video, good or bad, and you as a wrestler have to respond to that. Now, just like in real life, we know wrestlers who have responded online in a negative way and have gotten over. People love that kind of stuff. Like, oh, he said this thing, can you believe it? And it gets him more popular. And there's sometimes the wrestler says a nice thing, and it'll be detrimental. Like people will take it the wrong way. Like, he's trying too hard, and I don't like this persona he's got. And vice versa. Sometimes you say a nice thing and you'll get rewarded. Sometimes you are a bad person online and people negatively respond to that. So we've incorporated that in the game, and we have an incident. You'll have 3 options to respond to this story, and your response whatever you choose to respond will have a positive, negative, or neutral effect. And depending on what you choose, is completely random. So let's say a story from, like, we have Wrestle Talk in the game. Wrestle Talk might say to both me and you, we're both playing the game at the same time. It might say, we've got you in a video of worst 10 wrestlers in this past year, and I'll respond and say, I don't care. And you'll respond and say, I don't care. And I'll be rewarded positively from it, and you'll be rewarded negatively. It's completely random. We want to add that element of like randomness in the game. And if you do well, if you get a good response, you can add like a contract or miles or whatever to your inventory. And if you do bad, you have to give one up. And that just started. We reached out to Wrestle Talk first and said, look, we've got this idea of a game. We want to incorporate social media kind of companies in there. Do you guys want to be in it? And they were like, yeah, cool, we'll be in it. Then we reached out to Cultaholic, said, we watch your videos online. Do you mind being in the game? They were like, yep, we'll be in the game. And then I was like, okay, let's just start reaching out, PW Insider, and then Sports Skeeter. And there was a guy who works for Sports Skeeter who is a fan of the concept of the game, and he reached out to us, and we were like, oh, do you mind Sports Skeeter being in there? And then we realized Web is Jericho is a big platform that also has news and gossip and rumors and stuff, and we sent them a message and said, would you guys mind being in the game? And they were like, we don't mind either. And we were like, that's it, we're done. We've got Jericho, we've got Wrestle Talk, we've got Cultaholic, we're packing up shop, and we're made. So,
and you find that's been a big boost to you, obviously, from that initial 5 people that didn't contact you to suddenly you've got people contacting you, asking to be in the game, and obviously speaking to people that are real big names in the wrestling world that are actually going, yeah, we'll be part of the game. Do you think there's been a complete change for kind of like how people are seeing yourself as this game?
Not completely. We've had, and it's perfectly fine and valid if we've reached out to people and they've said, either they've said, I can't, because of contractual issues, or people have just not responded. Probably they don't want to respond negatively to somebody that they don't know, which is perfectly fine. My main job is a marketing agency. We pitch out to people all the time, and sometimes people say, no, thank you, we're going to go with somebody else, or we're not feeling your pitch or whatever. It's a part of life. So we never take it like negatively. It helped us from a UK perspective, because we were able to go in and say, look, we have this wrestler, that wrestler, that wrestler. And then when we did that, because some of those wrestlers also worked out in Germany, we went to the German guys and said, oh, by the way, da-da-da-da-da. And then that helped us in France, because some of the French guys are in Germany. Oh, by the way, da-da-da-da. So it kind of layers started adding. The one area that we found it a bit difficult is the US. And we've got, I think, about 4 or 5 promotions from the US now in the game. But speaking to people out in the US, they're like, look, if the promoter doesn't know you, there's a lot of how do I put this in a nice way? A lot of bluster when it comes to the wrestling world, what they say in the US. So someone will come up to them with an idea. I've got this idea, and nothing ever happens. And so they're used to that quite extensively. So they said, look, if you're just approaching cold to somebody and saying, oh yeah, we've got all these guys, there's still an element of them feeling, I don't think it's going to happen. I've never heard of this guy. Who is this guy? He's not a wrestling guy. So we are struggling a little bit from a US perspective, but that will just change over time as when the game goes live and people see it and they see all the things. I'm sure we'll be breaking down a few doors down there as well.
Yeah, and anyone that watches this, is there still time for them to be involved in the game? Is promotions, can they still get involved in the game? What's the best way of getting in contact with you? What sort of things do they need to tell you?
Yeah, so from a promotions perspective and wrestlers perspective, we're always saying, if you're a new promotion that we haven't got in the game, just send us your details. We'll see if we can incorporate you in the game. There's certain countries that we're kind of full on capacity right now for this version of the game anyway. But there's other countries that we're always adding places. If you're a wrestler and you've wrestled or you do wrestle for one of the promotions that we have in the game, by all means, we'll add you to the game. And just send us, the best way, I guess, is to find us on social media. It's Indie Wrestler. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Just DM us on there. Send us your details, and we'll kind of go from there.
Nice, ideal. With regards to the promotions, are you kind of getting the artwork for the belts involved in it, or is it just going to be like the champ? Nice.
Yeah.
So again, going more authentic.
So we're trying, man. We're trying. So I mean, not every promotion has either an image that is usable in a game. Sometimes it's independent wrestling, right? Like sometimes they're like, oh, we've got an image of the belt strapped on the guy's waist or around his shoulder. It's like, no, I can't use that. It has to be like a photo shoot style thing. or some, will just be in a state of flux. We're getting new belts made and whatnot. So we have a default wrestling belt for promotions that don't have a title belt. But I think I would say maybe 70% of the promotions in the game, we have their actual title belt. So the way that that works is once you become a main event, once you sign a contract to be a main event guy for that promotion, you'll unlock the ability to compete for the world title. Up until that point, if you're a mid carder or a upper carder, you can't actually challenge for the world title. Once you're a main event guy, then once you're a main event guy, if your matches have been good for that promotion, if the promoter is happy with you, then you might be able to go challenge for the belt. And if you then, if you go to speak to the promoter before the match and he says, look, I want you to win, you then, at the end of the match, you'll be the champion, and that will be added to your kind of inventory.
So, just talking about the game there again, I hear you talking, because I've not played the game. It's kind of listening to what you're saying. I'm going, oh, I want to talk about this. So when you go into a new promotion, you start as one of the openers, and you build your way up to the obviously main event. I take it then when you unlock the next promotion, you will again start off as an opener, and you build your way up into that promotion.
Yeah. So at certain points, your historical promotions that you may or may not have worked for, but at certain points, once you might be an opener for one, but then you might be eligible to be a mid carder for another one. So then you go back and you negotiate with the promoter and you say, look, I've been here for a while. I think I can get paid more. I can change my position on the card and whatnot. And then you can bump yourself up. But you can't, let's say, for example, you're on level 1 and you sign a contract as an opener. You can't, after playing level 2, go back to that promoter and say, oh, by the way, can I be a main event guy? He's going to show you the door, right? He's going to be like, what you're talking about. It just doesn't make sense. So as you progress, the idea is, someone who, if you go to Australia, for example, an Australian company might say, oh yeah, you're a UK guy, you're a main event guy in the UK. We'll put you in the mid card in one of our shows. Let's see how that kind of goes. So you might get to a certain level in the UK, and then that means you can expand your horizons internationally. But it doesn't mean internationally you're going to be at the same level.
No.
There's more exposure in one place and stuff. So I'm trying to not make the game sound amazing, because I don't want anyone to feel like underwhelmed when they actually see it, because it is a text-based game, and text-based games are for certain types of individuals. It's not a thing for everyone. But we have really thought a lot about this and trying to bring it all together, trying to make it as realistic as possible. But just with that caveat of it is going to be text-based.
Yeah, and the things like when you talk about stuff, there is that authentic feel to it about the talking to the promoters and negotiating your contracts and stuff like that, and how much you're getting paid. And I think that obviously it's a very good base. You've got the base correct. You're working on the base, and then you're going to deal with the rest of it afterwards. So get the initial game out, see how it feels. I'm sure there'll be bugs in the game at some point. So people will kind of feel things, and then, but as you add things to it, I think you'll build the game up.
So it is going to be, the most difficult thing that we have is, of course, this has been self-funded. I'm an agency owner, so what I did was I said, okay, I'll take the hit, I'll pay for this, by investing in the staff and investing in all the kind of stuff. At a certain point, that money does have to come back in for us to be able to reinvest that in. And we're not asking people to kind of buy the game. So we just encourage people to help us out, purchase some of the gear that's in the game. If everyone does a little bit, it'll help cover the cost and it'll help us expand. And, this game is made for wrestling fans. It isn't made as a commercial opportunity. We're not, I've played other games, wrestling games, where every day you have to buy a new thing. And, in about a week's time, that item that you brought has no purpose in the game whatsoever. And if you don't buy it, you're not going to be as good as, we're not going from that perspective. We just want to ensure that we can build a game that's enjoyable as possible.
No, honestly, I'm very, very excited about playing it. I know I've signed up to be hopefully one of the testers when it comes to Apple products. I know you're testing Android in the next week. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of bugs still. So we're just fixing those, and we're putting the last touches to the game. And I think right now we're just doing polishing, and we're adding a tutorial in. Once that's done, we're going to go for beta testing, and beta testing is going to be the final version of the game. But Apple have a far more rigorous kind of process to vet stuff. So while the Android one is beta testing, we're going to finish off the bits and pieces you need with Apple, and then we're going to ask people to test it for us on Apple. And we're hoping, originally we were hoping to have it ready by the end of February, but it's not going to be it's either still going to be end of February or early March that the game will be out.
And obviously talking about the game, obviously people have been really anticipating the release of it. Obviously COVID's probably not helped yourself.
Oh
So
man,
it's all kind of been delayed, but I think it's important to get the game right. And I think you are doing the right thing by not sending a game out that's not ready, and you're getting it ready and you're putting that
yeah.
kind of, because it is a project for you, a project of love at the end of the day, because you've wanted this game for a long time and now you've managed to build it. You want it to send that and you want it to be right for you as well as everyone else that's playing it. So I think you are doing it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, we've had bumps along the road. We had COVID. There was a speaking out thing. There was a period of time where we just had to pause the game because there were names popping up left, right, and center. We didn't want to put names in the game that might have been, and then there was counter accusations and all that kind of stuff. And then when we got to the logic part of the game, the mathematical stuff, it's so like it's insanely deep to the point where we're now thinking about putting an FAQ on our website because without the FAQ, the intricacies of the game may not make sense to somebody like, oh, I did this, why did this happen, and so on and so forth. So there has been lots of little hurdles along the way that we just never would have anticipated because there isn't a template for this kind of a game. Like even Football Manager is very much like, okay, you have two teams and 11 players and the stats and all that kind of stuff. This is very much like you're not going in to win a match, you're going in to have a good match. It's a completely like wrestlers don't go in, say to promoters, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to beat this guy 1, 2, 3. It's like, okay, what do you want me to do today? And that's a completely different perspective to try to build a game from. So yeah, we've had a few challenges, but we see the finishing line now, very very soon, and man, we just want to share it with everyone. So
Yeah.
I'm getting itchy feet myself. I'm on the developer like every like, come on man, there's only these three things left, and he's like, you do realize this is a whole big piece of work? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, come on man, 2 seconds.
Amazing. So last couple of questions just for yourself. Obviously, where do you see the game in 2 to 3 years? Where would you like to see it in 2 to 3 years?
Well, we're hoping in a couple of years' time we'll have promotions with from Japan in there, Mexico in there, and the US in there. Those are three territories. With Japan and Mexico, it's primarily a language issue. It's very difficult to explain how the game works across that language barrier. It's far more difficult than we thought it was going to be. So we want to get those promotions in. We want to get female wrestlers in. One of the difficulties that we had with it's called independent indie wrestler, and it's all about independent scene. You know, we needed to have enough of a pool of women to be able to then correlate and make the game at the same difficulty level as if you were a male, and then map out that journey, how that works in the game. We just haven't had the time to do that. That's another part of the game that we want to put in, and then we want to have, we want to reinvest. If we do make some money, we want to reinvest that back into independent wrestling. Having wrestlers in the game and maybe having some of their gear in the game and the proceeds that come from the gear purchases, some of that goes back to the wrestlers, to kind of keep the ecosystem of the wrestling industry, maybe sponsor some wrestling promotions, some of their shows and whatnot. So that's really where we kind of anticipate seeing it in a couple of years' time. And yeah, just trying to add as many bells and whistles on it along the journey as we can.
No, it sounds incredible, really. And I think, yeah, as you're saying, is that that community, you've built that community in the game, and you want to give back to the community at the end point. So if people kind of like the game and put a little bit of money into it, it's obviously going to come all the way back again to obviously be reinvested, which I think is
Yeah.
obviously something to be kind of proud of. So in regards to the game, last thing is the kind of dream to be going to an indie show. And as you said at the beginning of the interview, you're playing the game and someone behind you is like, oh, I've got that game and I'm at this point. Is that kind of like at that point there, do you reckon you would have made it with the game and it would be like that kind of full circle sort of motion?
That'd be pretty cool. I mean, what I was imagining, when I was brainstorming this was, imagine if I was in a queue to go to a wrestling show, that we were one of the sponsors of, Indie Wrestler is sponsoring this wrestling show, and I'm in the queue, and the guy in front of me is playing this game on his phone, hopefully not saying anything bad about it, like just playing it, and I could just see someone playing this game, or sat, in the stands in the audience, and just look next to me, and someone's either got it installed or they're playing it on their phone. I thought that would have been a pretty cool kind of thing, a pretty cool experience to kind of go through, and ultimately, that's what we want to do, create something for fans, something that will help the wrestling industry, hopefully something that helps wrestlers, widely. And we've learned a lot on this journey just as game developers, as game producers, as a digital agency. So that's always a plus point. So yeah, ultimately, those are the kind of things that I think would be cool.
Amazing. And when the game's obviously out and people are playing it, are you guys open to kind of feedback? People saying, "Oh, could you try and do this, do that?" Because obviously, a lot of it's text based. I know you've asked out for people in the community to obviously say, "Is anyone that wants to write some stuff for you guys?" Is that obviously going to be open throughout the whole time the game comes out? So obviously building on top. It's not just coming from your own mind, but it's coming from other people.
Yeah, I mean, we've had lots of ideas from people within the wrestling space, collaborations and ideas and suggestions that we've tried to incorporate. Obviously, it is very difficult to incorporate every single idea. People will have some crazy ideas, and you're just like, maybe when we've got £100,000,
Yeah.
we can kind of do that, right? We're always open to ideas, suggestions. We're always open to feedback. That back and forth. As a digital agency, one of the things that we always say to all our companies: listen to your customers, right? Listen to what they're saying, because they're the ones who are using the product on a day-to-day basis. They're the ones who will really tell you whether it's. And we've had, in the testing that we've had feedback, we've had suggestions, and generally we've had good, good kind of feedback. The proof in the pudding will really be when it goes live. And there's a guy in Denmark playing the game who has no idea who I am, and is not going to be nice because he doesn't know me, doesn't know the history of the game. And just going to say this game is crap. It doesn't work. And I thought it was going to be this, that. Or there's someone in, we had somebody the other day from Tunisia messaging us on the and saying, "I'm so looking forward to this. It'd be amazing if we'd go on and say, I'm in Tunisia and I'm playing this game right now." And that kind of having that back and forth with the live gaming community environment, I think will be pretty awesome. And you know what wrestling fans are like. They ain't gonna hold back.
No.
They ain't gonna be shy to share their thoughts and comments. So it'll be fun.
No, I appreciate it, and I appreciate time, and I really am looking forward to the game coming out. And obviously, when it comes out, I'm sure it'll be going up on your socials. Can you just remind us of your social media accounts, just so anyone that's watching can obviously go and follow you?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you just type in Indie Wrestler, you'll find us. But our handle on Twitter is Indie Wrestle. Someone had already taken Indie Wrestler. But on Instagram and Facebook, it's Indie Wrestler without any gaps. But if you type in Indie Wrestler, you'll see our logo. It looks like a gaming logo, and we're there.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time, Rehan, and I look forward to the game coming out, and I'm sure we'll be sharing it all. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Cheers.